What makes some people stand out and achieve such high levels of prosperity, while others spend their entire lives struggling with overdue bills, debts, and shelved dreams? This question seems to haunt those who feel they were born to live something greater, but find themselves trapped in a cycle that never changes. The truth is that the richest men in the Bible knew something that many still haven't understood. They carried mental principles, thought habits, and internal attitudes that set their minds on the path to wealth even in difficult times. And none of this had to do with luck, inheritance, or external opportunity. It was all about how they thought, how they believed, and how they positioned themselves in life. This is one of the biggest misconceptions many people have, thinking that wealth is a matter of doing more, working harder, running more, when in fact the most prosperous men in the Bible were guided by such a strong, unwavering mental direction that external factors had no choice but to respond. They didn't lament what they didn't have, nor did they blame others. On the contrary, they were masters at keeping their minds focused on what they desired, even when nothing on the outside indicated change. They didn't wait to believe, they believed first. Then the rest fell into place. This is the missing key for many people. While many today are distracted by bad news, financial difficulties, and a culture that reinforces scarcity, these men fed on the idea that they were naturally blessed. They didn't just wait for the blessing, they lived as if they were already blessed. And this is the central point you need to understand. Wealth begins with how you see yourself. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you believe you are capable of having. And if within you, there is still the feeling that money is hard to come by, that prosperity is for the few, that growth is dangerous, then that is exactly what will be repeated in your reality. Before continuing with the teachings, make sure you've subscribed to the channel, but only do so if you believe you were born to enjoy the best this earth has to offer. If you feel this content speaks to you, comment below, "I am ready to prosper." Say it out loud too. Let your ear hear the sound of your own decision. Let's continue. Every transformation begins when you understand that your mind is programmed, and if it's programmed, it can be reprogrammed. The richest men in the Bible acted as those who had deep convictions about worthiness, purpose, and obedience to principles. They didn't live guided by fear, but by clarity. And that's what's missing in the mind of someone living in scarcity. Clarity. Because where clarity is lacking, confusion abounds. Where confusion abounds, doubt is born. And where there is doubt, there is no faith. Doubt paralyzes. Faith moves. The difference between those who live trapped in scarcity and those who live abundantly often lies in what a person believes is possible for them. If you grow up hearing that money is hard to come by, that those who have a lot are worthless, that the right thing to do is to live with little so as not to get lost, then your mind creates a block. It understands that growth is dangerous, that prospering can distance you from good things, but this is a lie that has been planted, an idea that is repeated until it seems true, and therefore it is necessary to re-educate the mind. Look, the men who prospered in the Bible, like Joseph, Abraham, Solomon, and others, weren't just spiritual. They were strategic. They had habits. They had vision. They had posture. They didn't live reacting to circumstances, but mastering their thoughts. When everything seemed to go wrong, they kept their heads held high, their mouths aligned with faith, and their vision focused on the promise. That's the mindset you need to develop. The world changes, situations change, but your mind can't be a leaf in the wind. When you start training your mind to think about wealth, it's not about deluding yourself. It's about starting to direct your thoughts to where you want to go. It's about stopping repeating phrases like, "That's too expensive, I'll never have that, that's not for me," and starting to replace them with empowering thoughts. Start saying, "I can grow, I am capable of having more, I am ready to enhance my life." Say that out loud now, even if it seems strange, even if you don't yet feel it's true, because over time your mind begins to accept this new language. Wealth is not a destination, it's a state of mind. It's not about how much money you have in your pocket today. It's about how you think about yourself. Those who think like the rich move differently. Those who think like the poor sabotage themselves without even realizing it. Some people when their lives start to improve, already feel guilt, fear, or anxiety. This shows that they haven't yet learned to see themselves as someone who deserves to live more. And if you don't see yourself in that place, you won't stay there. You might even get a promotion, make a good amount of money, but you'll find a way to lose it all, because your mind wasn't ready to sustain it. The richest men in the Bible knew that true wealth doesn't begin with money. It begins with an alliance with the right principles. It begins with a firm mind. It begins with a heart that doesn't sabotage itself. They knew that wealth without inner structure becomes burden, but with structure, it becomes expansion. That's why this content isn't about teaching magic formulas. It's about changing your way of thinking, because when the mind changes, everything changes. The environment changes. Opportunities appear, doors open, and most importantly, you begin to behave differently. A wealth mindset is built. It doesn't spring from nothing, and it can't be sustained by weak thoughts. You need to nourish your mind with words of strength, direction, and possibility. And eliminate the habit of complaining, comparing, and disbelieving. Every time you think small, you limit what you can receive. But every time you think big, even without knowing how it will happen, you activate an invisible force within you. And that force is the beginning of change. The men who prospered in the scriptures knew that thought generates action, and action generates results. They thought responsibly, they spoke with conviction, and they acted with discipline. None of this was by chance. They prepared themselves inwardly for everything they were going to receive. That's what you need to do too. Because the truth is that what you want already exists. It's just waiting for you to become someone capable of sustaining it. If this message resonates with you, write in the comments, "My mind is ready to grow." This further reinforces within you the decision to break free from scarcity, because now you're not just listening. You're actively participating in your transformation. And that's the true secret of those who thrive. They commit to what they believe in. It's not just wishful thinking, it's conviction. Most people believe the secret to wealth lies outside themselves. They look at the life of someone successful and think, they must have started with money, they were lucky, they know someone influential. And with these thoughts, they shy away from the responsibility of growing internally. But the richest men in the Bible had a different understanding. They weren't guided by what they saw around them. They were guided by a firm inner vision. They knew that true wealth wasn't about what they possessed, but about who they became. Wealth was a consequence, never the starting point, and this understanding changes everything. You need to understand something fundamental. As long as you continue to believe that prosperity depends on external factors, luck, connections, inheritance, you will continue waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for the perfect conditions. Waiting for someone to appear and change your life. But the truth is that God has already placed within you everything you need to begin the transformation. What's missing isn't external resources. What's missing is your belief in it. Think about the story of David. When he was anointed king, he was the youngest son, someone no one took seriously. When the prophet Samuel arrived at Jesse's house looking for the future king of Israel, David's father didn't even bother to call him. He was in the field, tending the sheep, doing a job that no one valued. But do you know what God saw in him? It wasn't his appearance. It wasn't his physical strength. It wasn't his influence. 1 Samuel 16:7 says, "The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." What was in David's heart? Faithfulness, courage, trust in God. He killed a lion and a bear alone in the field because he learned to trust that God was with him. And it was precisely this heart, this mindset, that prepared him to face Goliath and then rule an entire nation. David's wealth and power didn't begin with a crown. They began with a transformed heart, with a mind that knew who to trust. How many times have you looked at your current situation and thought, I don't have the conditions to grow, I don't have money to invest, I don't have time, I don't have important contacts. But these excuses, however real they may seem, are keeping you stuck, because the truth is that you don't need to have everything to start. You just need to start with what you have. I remember going through times when it seemed impossible to move forward. Moments when I looked around and saw only limitations. And you know what I learned? that while we remain focused on what we don't have, we lose sight of what is already in our hands. Sometimes we are like that servant in the parable of the talents who buried what he received out of fear. We become so worried about not losing the little we have that we end up doing nothing with it. But look what Jesus said in Matthew 25:29. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. This may seem harsh at first glance, but the profound truth here is this: whoever uses what they have well receives more. Whoever wastes or buries it out of fear loses even that. God wants to see you managing well, taking good care, multiplying what is already in your hands. Then he entrusts you with more. Think of Joseph in Egypt. This man had every reason to feel like a victim of circumstances. His brothers sold him into slavery, Potiphar's wife lied about him, and he ended up in prison unjustly. Years and years suffering for things he didn't do. But do you know what set Joseph apart? He never lost his inner vision. He never stopped being faithful, working with excellence, trusting in God. Even as a slave in Potiphar's house, Joseph stood out so much that he was put in charge of everything. Even in prison, he was put in charge of the other prisoners. Why? Because wherever Joseph was, he carried with him a mindset of excellence, responsibility, and faith. And that is exactly what led him to the palace. Genesis 39:2 says, "The Lord was with Joseph and he prospered." Joseph's prosperity didn't begin in the palace. It began in his mind, in his heart, in the way he faced every situation. Do you understand what I'm saying? Real transformation happens from the inside out, never from the outside in. You might win the lottery tomorrow, you might receive an unexpected inheritance, you might get an amazing job, but if your mind is still programmed for scarcity, for fear, for self-sabotage, you will lose everything. I've seen this happen so many times. People who receive incredible opportunities and can't hold on to them because internally they weren't ready yet. On the other hand, I've also seen people who started with absolutely nothing and built empires, not because they were lucky, not because they knew someone powerful, but because they cultivated a rich mindset, a clear vision, unwavering faith. They understood that wealth is a consequence of who you become, not where you start. Solomon is another powerful example. When he became king, he was still young. God appeared to him in a dream and said, "Ask me for whatever you want me to give you." Imagine that. You can ask for anything: money, power, fame. But do you know what Solomon asked for? Wisdom. In 1 Kings 3:9, he said, "Give your servant an understanding heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong." Solomon understood something that many still don't understand today. External wealth without inner wisdom is certain disaster. He asked for what would transform him from within, not what would only enrich him outwardly. And look what God answered in 1 Kings 3:12 and 13. "I will do what you asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart. I will also give you what you did not ask for, wealth and honor." You see, when you seek inner transformation first, when you strive to become wise, upright, and faithful, external blessings follow as a consequence. Matthew 6:33 confirms this. "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." All these things, provision, peace, prosperity, come when you prioritize what truly matters. Now let me be very honest with you. Sometimes we get frustrated because we want quick results. We want to plant today and harvest tomorrow, but that's not how it works. Abraham waited 25 years for the promise of a son. Joseph spent more than a decade from the dream until he saw it fulfilled. David was anointed king while still young, but only assumed the throne many years later. The preparation time is as important as the harvest time. It is in this waiting time that your mindset is tested and strengthened. It is in this time that you learn to trust even without seeing. It is in this time that you become someone capable of managing the blessing when it arrives. I went through periods of waiting that left me anxious, impatient, questioning whether God had forgotten me. But today, I look back and see that those periods were essential. It was there that I learned things I wouldn't have learned otherwise. Hebrews 10:36 says, "You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what he has promised. Perseverance doesn't mean standing still and passively waiting. Perseverance means continuing to do what is right, continuing to grow, continuing to believe, even when the results haven't yet appeared. It's easy to have faith when everything is going well. The challenge is maintaining faith when everything seems to be against you. And look, there's something we need to talk about honestly. Many people sabotage their own prosperity without even realizing it. They say they want to grow, but they continue to surround themselves with negative people who only complain. They say they want abundance, but they constantly talk about scarcity. They say they trust in God, but they act out of fear all the time. Proverbs 23:7 says, "For as he thinks in his heart, so is he." In other words, you are what you consistently think. If you spend all day thinking about lack, difficulty, and limitations, that's what you will attract and manifest in your life. But if you start to renew your mind, to think about possibilities, solutions, and growth, your reality will begin to change. Romans 12:2 teaches us, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." Transformation begins in the mind. When you renew your thoughts, when you change your limiting beliefs, when you begin to see yourself as God sees you, that's when true transformation happens. You were created in the image and likeness of an abundant, creative, and generous God. It makes no sense to live feeling small, incapable, and unworthy. That is not humility. That is denying who God says you are. True humility is recognizing that everything comes from Him and that you depend on Him. But it's not about constantly diminishing yourself or rejecting the blessings He has prepared for you. Ephesians 3:20 says that God is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to His power that is at work within us. Infinitely more. Not a little more. Not just enough. Infinitely more. But look where that power works, within us. Inside you. The power of transformation. The power of multiplication, the power of growth is operating within you at this very moment. You just need to align yourself with it. How? By starting to act like someone who already understands this. By starting to take good care of the little you have. By starting to be grateful even when it's still little. By starting to make wise decisions, even in small things. Luke 16:10 is clear, "Whoever is faithful in small matters will be faithful in large ones. And whoever is dishonest in small matters will be dishonest in large ones." God is watching how you manage what is already in your hands. Do you respect every reel that comes in? Do you manage what you have wisely, or do you spend impulsively? Do you give thanks for small blessings or only complain about what's still lacking? These things seem like details, but they are fundamental, because God won't entrust much to someone who doesn't know how to take care of little. And this isn't God being strict or stingy. It's pure wisdom. It's like teaching a child. You don't give a sharp knife to a 2-year-old, do you? You wait for them to grow, mature, and show they know how to use simple objects carefully. Then you entrust them with more complex tools. In the same way, God expects to see you managing what you have well before increasing your responsibilities and resources. Another thing the rich men of the Bible had in common was strategic generosity. They didn't hoard everything for fear of running out. They understood the principle of sowing and reaping. Luke 6:38 says, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." But pay attention, it's not about giving haphazardly. It's not about giving out of obligation or guilt. It's not about giving to manipulate God into giving back to you. It's about giving wisely, joyfully, and purposefully. 2 Corinthians 9:7 says, "Each one should give what he has decided in his heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver." When you give joyfully, knowing you are planting a good seed, you activate a powerful spiritual principle. But I also need to say, don't give beyond your means. Don't go into debt to give. Don't harm your family to appear generous. Wisdom is fundamental. Paul in 2 Corinthians 8:12 clarifies, "For if the willingness is there, the gift is acceptable, according to what one has, not according to what one does not have." God values the heart, not the size of the offering. The widow who gave 2 small coins gave more in the eyes of Jesus than the rich who gave large sums, because she gave all she had in faith. What I'm trying to show you is that true wealth is much deeper than numbers in a bank account. It's a mindset. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of relating to God, to yourself, to resources, to people. When you develop this mindset, external circumstances begin to align, not overnight, not magically, but consistently and realistically. Philippians 4:13 is a well-known verse. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. But we often forget the context. Paul was talking about learning to live in any situation, in abundance and in need. He had developed such great inner strength that external circumstances no longer controlled his peace. That is true wealth. That is real prosperity. So, dear one, the invitation I extend to you today is simple but powerful. Stop looking for the solution outside. Stop waiting for someone to come and save you. Stop thinking you need perfect circumstances to begin. Start from where you are, with what you have, with who you are today, and commit to growing internally every day. Read the Word. Pray sincerely. Renew your mind, change your words, adjust your habits. Take good care of the little you have. Be grateful. Be generous with wisdom. Take responsibility for your life, and trust that God is working in you, through you, for you. Jeremiah 29:11 says, For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. God has plans of prosperity for you, not of scarcity, not of failure, of prosperity. But you need to align yourself with those plans. You need to become someone ready to receive what He has prepared. Wealth is a consequence, never the starting point. This understanding changes everything. Because when you understand this, you stop chasing money and start chasing transformation. And when you transform yourself, wealth comes naturally, not as an end goal, but as a natural result of who you have become. You are capable. You are loved. You were created to thrive. Believe it. You need to understand something. As long as you see growth as something distant, dependent on external factors, you will remain a hostage to circumstances. You will continue to justify your lack of progress because of the government, the crisis, your family, the education you received, or even the neighborhood where you live. But the most prosperous men in the Bible didn't act like that. They used what they had. They started with little, with almost nothing, but they used it wisely. And that made all the difference. They didn't wait for ideal conditions. They created conditions with the strength of faith and mental discipline. They weren't stuck in excuses. They were stuck in direction. The secret to wealth has always been in one's mindset. It's not a matter of studying more, working harder, or having more opportunities. All of that can help, yes. But it doesn't work if the mind is still programmed for scarcity. If a person believes deep down that they will never have much, that money corrupts, or that prospering is too difficult, then all effort will be sabotaged from within. Therefore, before changing your life, you need to change your internal dialogue. What do you say to yourself every day? What are the phrases you repeat when you look at your bank account, when you think about your future? The richest men in the Bible were disciplined in their thoughts and words. They knew that words create realities, that the mouth is an extension of thought. So they used words as a tool for alignment. When things got difficult, they didn't feed defeat with their tongues. They spoke of what they wanted to see, even before seeing it. They affirmed victory, declared abundance, and reinforced confidence. And this gradually shaped reality. What seems simple today was sacred to them. They didn't waste words on murmuring. And you need to learn that. Every time you say something is impossible, your mind registers it as a barrier. Every time you compare yourself to someone and feel inferior, your energy drops. And what drops, blocks. You need to break this cycle. Start feeding your mind with phrases that push you upwards, not downwards. Start practicing, I am capable of growing. My reality is changing. I am becoming a prosperous person. Say it now, out loud. Even if it seems strange, keep going. Your mind needs to hear new messages to build new connections. Many people believe that positive thinking is nonsense, that it doesn't change anything. But the richest men in the Bible lived exactly like that. focused on what they wanted to see. They weren't distracted by external chaos. They knew that what you focus on increases, and if you focus on lack, you'll increase lack. If you focus on limitations, you'll increase limitations. But if you focus on possibility, on the right direction, on what good can happen, then the scenario begins to change. The external begins to align with what is being built internally. Another powerful point is that they were consistent. They didn't jump from thought to thought. They focused their thoughts and held onto them, even as time passed and things took time. Because they knew that wealth isn't magic. It's a process, and every process requires firmness. A weak mind gives up at the first obstacle. A rich mind maintains focus until the result appears. If you want to experience prosperity, you need to stop doubting all the time. You need to stop starting with faith today and giving up tomorrow. This weakens your faith and drains your energy. They also knew how to use their time to their advantage. Instead of wasting energy on comparison, envy, criticism, or gossip, they occupied themselves with what builds them up. They used their time to strengthen their minds, to plan, to give thanks. Yes, gratitude was a daily practice, not because everything was perfect, but because they knew that gratitude is a key that unlocks abundance. When you are grateful for the little you have, you activate the principle of multiplication. But when you complain, even when you have something, you block the flow of prosperity. And this principle remains valid to this day. Most people only give thanks when everything goes right. The most prosperous men in the Bible gave thanks before the blessing arrived, because they knew that giving thanks beforehand is a sign of faith. And faith, when aligned with mental discipline, generates transformation. They were rich inside, and that's why they became rich outside. External wealth only reveals what already exists internally, never the other way around. That's why so many people earn a lot of money and lose it all in a short time, because their minds haven't been prepared yet. And without internal preparation, nothing lasts. Pay attention to this. You can start with little, like Joseph, who was sold into slavery but ended up ruling an entire nation. You can be rejected like David, but become king. You can feel directionless like Abraham, but find purpose and abundance along the way. None of this happened by chance. They all had their minds aligned with principles greater than fear. They obeyed, yes, but they also believed. They also took a stand. They also took responsibility for what they carried within. And now the question for you is, what have you been carrying in your mind? What are you feeding yourself with? Doubts, bad news, negative thoughts, or firm convictions about what you can achieve? Because what you feed grows. And if you continue to feed the idea that you will never have it, never grow, never get anywhere, then that's what will repeat itself. But if you start feeding your mind with affirmations of faith, thoughts of possibility, words of strength, then your reality will adjust over time. If you've made it this far, comment now. I am reprogramming my mind for wealth. This reinforces the process within you. Remember, wealth begins with awareness, then it becomes behavior, and only then, results. You are not here by chance. You are here because something within you has already decided to grow, and that is stronger than any obstacle. Have you ever noticed how the mind has the power to completely transform the way someone lives? It doesn't matter the environment, the social condition, or the history of failures. When the mind changes, everything changes. The richest men in the Bible knew this. They didn't depend on external motivation. They didn't wait to feel like it. They trained their minds to think correctly, even when everything seemed to be going wrong. And that's what you need to learn. Your reality will only change when you change your way of thinking. There's no point in wanting a rich life with a mind that still thinks like someone born to survive. The first thing that needs to be broken is this idea that you are small, that you don't have much value, that you don't have enough ability. This way of thinking is an invisible prison. It limits you from within, even before the outside world challenges you. And if you don't break with this small view of yourself, all your potential will remain buried. You know that feeling of unworthiness that appears when you start to improve your life? That inner voice that says, "This isn't for me. I won't be able to handle it. Soon everything will go wrong again. That's not real. That's just old programming that needs to be rewritten." The richest men in the Bible lived with the certainty that they were called to something great. They didn't hide behind excuses. They didn't shift responsibility to others. They assumed that change began from within. They understood that what you carry in your mind transforms into behavior, and behavior becomes results. Prosperity is built in the mind long before it appears in practical life. Therefore, stop waiting for external signs to start believing. Start believing. Start seeing yourself as someone prosperous, even if you are still struggling. Because it is the inner vision that sustains the external transformation, you need to develop the habit of thinking big, not as an exaggeration, not as an illusion, but as a mental exercise of expansion. Thinking big means imagining possibilities greater than your current situation. It means allowing yourself to desire good things, better environments, a lighter life, with more peace and comfort. And why is this important? Because a mind that doesn't allow itself to imagine also doesn't allow itself to achieve. If you only think about what you can do with what you have, you'll never get anywhere. Thinking big is about getting out of autopilot. It's about taking your mind out of survival mode. It's about training your brain to make room for the new. And here's a powerful secret. The most prosperous men in the Bible weren't afraid to prosper. They didn't see wealth as something negative. On the contrary, they knew that having more resources allowed them to bless more people, do more, build more, multiply more. Nowadays, many people have been taught to fear wealth, to associate money with pride, with corruption, with evil, and this completely blocks growth, because the mind rejects what it believes to be dangerous. So if, somewhere inside you, this connection between prosperity and something bad still exists, that's the first knot you need to untie. True wealth doesn't make anyone worse. It only reveals what already existed in the heart. And those with a prosperous, clean, responsible mind will use resources for good things. They will generate change. They will impact others. The problem isn't having a lot. The problem is not knowing who you are when you start having it. And that's why the richest men in the Bible were internally prepared. They knew how to manage what they had. They knew how to multiply. They knew how to serve. They knew how to be generous. They didn't lose themselves with what they acquired. And you also need to become that kind of person.